I'm back. If you don't know, this is part 2 in my review of the Paris novel by Ruth Reichl. I am trying to be better about my time and not having too long of reviews, so I decided to cut this one into 2 parts. If you have not seen the first part, go back and watch the first part. In any case, we are going to start tying things up, although honestly, I think that's a very loose term for this novel because I don't even know what I'm supposed to be tying up. I don't know what this novel's purpose was. We had left off with our main character, Stella, learning about a possible father. Thankfully, even though we do get into it, she decides, I'm not going to worry about that yet. I'm going to find Victoire's painting, and then I will worry about my dad, which that is problematic considering we don't have much time for that. There is 10%, I think maybe 5 to 7 is more accurate, of this novel dedicated to her father. It's not even an in-depth percent. It's more like, let me drive here, and let me drive there, and let me drive here, and let me drive there. Bing, 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 bing. There was not a lot of work put into the mystery of her paternity. She's shelving that for now in her quest to find, ooh, you know what? I'm a moron. This painter slash model slash fascination, her name's not Victoire, her name is Victorine. Her focus is Victorine. She goes to the library, and the librarian eventually says, if you can't find any information here about her, why don't you go find her birth and death records? Because that might tell you where she came from, and then you can go there. She takes George's daughter, Lucy, who I was like, is Lucy motherless? Actually, I didn't know who Lucy belonged to. I was like, is this random 7-year-old just running around the Royal Shakespeare Company? Who is she? But as I said, she's George's daughter. She does have the mother. The mother's just off screen. I think the mother's out of town or something for like months. Maybe that's what the French do. I don't know. Again, it just felt like Reichl. She didn't know what she was doing, so she just did whatever she wanted, and they let her. And the thing is, I guess Lucy is everything that Stella wasn't as a child. She is charming and silver-tongued. Everybody loves her, and she's cute to boot. They start going to all of these churches because the librarian and Stella decided that when Victorine was alive, and based off of her economic status and what her dad did for a living, this is the area that would contain her birth and or death records. It takes them a couple days, and they have to pretend that they are looking for information on Lucy's great-grandmother, but they finally hit jackpot. This sends the two of them to Cologne. Again, excuse my really bad French accent. I'm trying. And they go up to where Victorine is from. They knock on the door, and the woman inside listens to what Lucy has to say. She seems super receptive, and the next thing she knows, she's handing Lucy a little goodie bag of cookies and closing the door on them. It turns out that she doesn't know anything about Victorine, but her mother might. But her mother is old and deaf and living off somewhere else, so they have to come back in 2 weeks in order for her to go and to talk to her mother and to get information. They come home with little to no answers. Stella does move into a flat that Gilles will keep because he's like an art curator. So he has a flat in which he will keep all this extra art. It's not much, but you know what? I'm just saying, can I be Stella? Can I have a journey of self and just have some rich old benefactor give me everything I need too? But at least she can have showers now, because when she was living at the Royal Shakespeare Company, she didn't have a shower. But she did have an alcove. She does have kind of a clearer focus as to what she wants from Victorine, which, I don't know. I thought there was just so much going on, and it was overwhelming and unclear. but she has decided what she wants, because I mentioned in my first video, Victorine her art was displayed in an exhibit, particularly a self-portrait. So I think it was Gilles, someone put it in her head, what you need to find that self-portrait, because you'll learn a lot about Victorine from this self-portrait. Personally, I don't understand what the big deal about Victorine is, but that could also be because this whole idea of like women's lib is not super important to me. But as I said, that is a theme. Feminism is a theme. Equality is a theme. And how dare people not give Victorine a chance because she was a woman in a time where women were not considered to be of any value. I think there's just an emotional disconnect for me, because that was not conveyed very well. It was just like self-righteous indignation on Stella's part, in my opinion. But she's looking for a self-portrait. Why she thinks she'll find the self-portrait, I don't know. How she thinks she'll recognize any of Victorine's paintings, I don't know. But this is what she is on the hunt for. So Gilles, he comes back around and he says, hey, you know what? You've got some time. I've got some time. I was gonna go visit a painter friend of mine down south. Why don't you come with me? She agrees, only to learn that this painter friend is Richard. So Richard Olney. I talked about how when her mother had been in Paris, I'm like, how do all these people know your mother? Like, what did she do? She was the original Kardashian, I think. When Gilles reveals who they're going to see, she again gets very indignant. She's like, oh, like all these people are betraying me and setting me up, and why would you all do this? And he's like, what are you talking about? I think George may have said something, but like he has no idea to the extent of which her connection to Richard may or may not be. They get there, they see Richard, he reveals he reveals the chef's name was Django. And that was the one and only time that he met Django and or Celia. I don't quite remember that, but he can't give her much more information than that. What she does know is she has too much to drink and she wakes up the next morning and she has no idea where she is. And I'm like, good night, girl. I wish that those, and maybe they were and I just skipped them because I started skipping all the eating parts. So maybe it was delved into how much she drank, but I feel like we fade to black on a relatively coherent scene of eating, only for her to wake up the next day and have no idea where she is. Well, where do you think she is? She's at Gilles' Chateau in Vézelay. Okay, so I jumped a little bit ahead of myself, so give me a second. When they get to where they're meeting Richard, they go to their hotel first. He says, here's a suitcase full of my wife's old things. I would like you to have them. If you missed my first review, the dude has money. His wife had all sorts of designer pieces. Talk about a pedestal. This woman is on the highest of pedestals. She could do no wrong. So she accepts them. She opens up this suitcase and she's like, I know that scent. This is when, spoiler, she realizes that dress, that Christian Dior dress that she put on at the very beginning of the novel, belonged to his wife. This, I thought, was very intriguing. She confronts him about it, because I'm like, that's kind of weird. She confronts him about it, and I guess she's very insecure. She likes to jump to conclusions, for sure. She doesn't like to trust people. And she's like, was this all a setup? Did you just donate this dress and have the proprietor call you whenever somebody bought it so you could approach them? It's like, no. When I first met you, that is why I approached you, because I recognized you in my wife's dress. But then the way you reacted towards me and ran away definitely made it awkward to say anything. And then the next time that we had an encounter, it just wasn't a good moment to say anything. But that's why I'm telling you now that this is my wife's dress. And she's like, well, why are, and then he tells her how he had stumbled across that secondhand shop because he saw his wife's clothes in the window. And he's like, why are my wife's clothes here? He tells her that he hadn't sold these clothes, that Jean-Marie's fiance had stolen them and sold them. And so she's just a real nasty character, and she's one more notch in this bedpost of plot points where we get, I mean, she's a good antagonist, but largely unexplored, largely depthless. I don't understand why we needed so much happening in this book, but she doesn't like Gilles because all she wants is money. And so she's staking her claim, and she's making sure that Gilles knows she's not going anywhere. This is when, at his chateau, he looks at Stella and goes, do you want to go through my wife's things and like have some? Which again, I thought was really strange wording, if anything, because she was like, why would I do that? That's weird. And he goes, honestly, it's just a ruse. I just want to have an opportunity. I want a reason to go into her closet to see what else the Empress has stolen. And in my head, I'm thinking, well, why don't you just say that? Why don't you just say, hey, you know what? I would like to see what is missing from her closet. There's nobody around. The walls do not have ears. Who is going to listen and go running to Jean-Marie or the Empress and be like, oh, your dad is going into your mom's closet? No. They might do it in the aftermath and be like, you know that woman he brought home? Well, he brought her home again, and then they went shopping in your mom's closet. Like, that I could see. But why does he have to make up this ruse to go into... No, he already explained to her what's going on with the clothes. So why he then had to say, do you just want to go see if there's anything you want so I can go into the closet? Just go into the closet already. Like, you don't even need her. This is your house. Let me simmer. They go into the closet. She does find some things she likes, but he also realizes that more things are missing. And here is when he facetiously says, maybe I should just get married again because of all that inheritance stuff. And if he gets married, then it threatens the money that Jean-Marie will get, which threatens how much the Empress will get. And all of this is just going to piss both of them off. So, like, why don't I just get married again? It was kind of funny. I liked him. I liked that he had a sense of humor, but I just the way it was handled, I thought it was odd. Another part about this whole clothes thing is that when Severine had died, he had intended to donate this collection of designer haute couture to a museum, but it seems that he needed to raise funds to take care of these clothes while they're on display. Why somebody with this kind of wealth has to raise funds, I don't know, unless that's just how it works, that he cannot personally fund, or maybe he's not that wealthy where he can donate the money needed to upkeep these clothes the way they're supposed to. But again, this is what I'm thinking, privilege at its finest, wealthy privilege at its finest, where her wardrobe is so esteemed that he could donate it to a museum, yet he's supposed to be so down to earth, and she's supposed to be one of the greatest creatures to ever walk God's green earth. Yeah. Another little tidbit that I'd forgotten to mention was that when Stella and Gilles had visited with Richard, he had some sort of a fascination obsession with Django. He ended up painting a picture of Django. She recognizes this painting as one that her mother had purchased and hung in their living room. So I guess this is supposed to confirm that Django is her father. Why else would Celine buy this picture and hang it in a place of prominence? Personally, I feel like that kind of sentimentality, as in, I know this is the father of my child, and therefore I'm going to have something in my house in memoriam of him, was weird. Went against her character. But as I said, I just don't, this book and I did not jive. I don't think it was particularly well crafted. There were things that were beautiful, if you like a literary novel, but it felt like a first novel, in my opinion, where Reichl couldn't quite wrangle everything into a coherent thought. She couldn't streamline. It was more stream of consciousness than streamlined. All that stuff goes down. She returns to Paris. She gets this wild hair to cut her hair. Why that needed to be there, I don't know, except there had been something earlier about her cutting her hair, so this is part of that journey of self. But now it is officially time for her to go back to Cologne and get the answers she needs. There's a little bit of a runaround where the mother has no answers. So they say, go over there, that guy was around, so he might have answers. And then that guy is like, all I can tell you is that she had a roommate. And I guess when one or both of them had died, since there were no heirs, it was a free-for-all. People went and grabbed what they wanted, and everything that was not taken was burned, including some pictures or portraits. But you know what? There was this other neighbor who risked life and limb in order to save some paintings from the fire. So it's possible that they might still be there. But you know what? The thing is, that neighbor's not actually there anymore. This American guy is living there, and I don't like him because he's doing all these renovations and he bothers me. But you never know what might be in the attic. They go over to the American guy, and the American guy's like, actually, I donated a bunch of stuff, and like, what does that guy, what's his problem with me this time? They're planning on going to the flea market where he said he donated things. Stella runs this by Gilles, and Gilles is like, why would he take that kind of art and culture to a flea market? Anybody who knows anything would take something valuable elsewhere. And she's like, I'm pretty sure this is the flea market he was telling me about. And my thought is like, this dude, I mean, I don't understand why any paintings by Victorine would be worth anything except that they had been on display in a certain exhibit. So I don't know why they would be considered valuable by anybody, because nobody's even heard of her. They might have seen her in a painting or two because she had been a popular model during her time, but far-reaching in my opinion. Turns out, yes, they do find at least one of her paintings. And do you know which one it is? It is her self-portrait. How easy was that? How freaking easy was that? That's what I'm saying, is that could have been such a good storyline. But there was no point to it. Like, what was the why behind all of this? Why was this painting so important? What about Victorine had to do with Stella's own journey? Except that Victorine was misunderstood and underappreciated in her own time and undervalued, which in many ways Stella is. She finds it. Gilles is like, well, are you going to sell it? Because if you're going to sell it, you need to get it authenticated. She's like, am I going to sell it? And I'm like, are you going to sell it? After all this time, you're going to sell this painting. And the one thing that I gleaned from this painting is she didn't recognize Victorine, because there's no way that fine lady in that painting could have been this street urchin turned lady of the night. It just never, it just couldn't be her. But it was, because she signed it. She and Gilles do go on a little journey. They find Django, and Django has an emotional meltdown. This guy who can't be tied down, wild horses can't drag me away. This dude who is everything that Celia would want in a man because he's exactly like her, is like, I'm your dad. I'm like, are you her dad? Have we established that this is her dad? Like, of all the men, this is her dad? And he's just gonna, he doesn't look like, or she doesn't look like him. And she brings up this point at some point, and he goes, you don't look like me, but you look exactly like my mother. And eventually, she sees a picture of his mother, and she's like, okay, I can see what you're saying. But I'm like, but does she? Does she look like his mother? He starts to become a clingy McClingster and continues to show up at the flat she's staying at, and he starts to furnish this flat and make himself and herself at home in this flat. He's the antithesis of everything she expected him to be. They eventually decide, so she is putting down roots. She's been here for an odd amount of time. She does sell the painting to a Boston museum. They decide, let's open a restaurant. And guys, we have 5% of the novel left. Maybe. I think we have 5 chapters left of this novel. And she decides to become a chef. So she has the palate of the gods, I guess. She just has this palate that anybody would be jealous of, which is in direct contrast to the way that she has always eaten and the way that she had been eating when she got to Paris. And everybody's like, well, no wonder you didn't like all the food your mom made because it was overwrought and ostentatious. She's like, let me use the money from my painting sale. And Gilles is like, absolutely not. I'm going to be a benefactor. The things are rolling along when the Empress barges into the kitchen. And I'm just like, finally, we get to see the woman, and she is livid. And I think Gilles had taken ill. So she goes, you're taking advantage of this sick old man, and that's not right. I am in the process of having him declared incompetent and committed for his own good. What she thinks that is, I don't know. Jean-Marie is standing behind her, and apparently he had no clue about any of this, and he's just astonished and appalled by all the things coming out of her mouth. Django looks at her and he goes, well, or he looks at Jean-Marie and he's like, well, what you need to do is you need to go to that little secondhand store and you need to see all of the things that she has been stealing and selling. This came out of nowhere. This was so underdeveloped. I don't understand why we had to have it here, because who is she? Who is she to then come in and have all these demands? I know we've been setting her up, but we've never met her. And then all of a sudden, she has authority? She doesn't, but it just, where did this come from? Stella goes to Gilles, and he's like, don't worry about it. I've got good lawyers. Nothing's gonna happen. Jean-Marie shows up, and he's dumped her. He and Gilles, they make amends, and then it looks like we're having a little bit of romance between Stella and Jean-Marie. The restaurant opens, everything's absolutely perfect. Opening night, Jean-Marie hands Stella a box, and what do you think is in the box? It is the dress from the beginning, and the name inside started out Victoire, it turned into Severine, and now the dress is called Stella. And that is the end of the novel for you. Baffling how this got published. Baffling. But that's just me, and I don't like literary fiction. I would love to hear from you if you've read this novel and your take on everything that Reichl put into it. But yeah, overall, it needed to be streamlined a little bit more. There we go, and have a great day. Bye.